Tonight's video is for all you grown and sexy folks out there. We're stepping into the seedy and sultry section of the video store, but not the one that was behind the curtain at your local mom and pop's video shop. Instead, it's the next best thing, the erotic thrillers that lived out in the open, littered in and amongst the drama and suspense sections, because the 90s erotic thriller was not just a genre, it was a whole ecosystem. Glossy lighting, whispered intentions, suspicious characters, and plots where the ulterior motives often fired like loaded weapons. What's up out there, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Anthony DeJoya, and this is Movies Never Say Die. If you are new here, this is the VHS VAULT Series, where we dust off those 90s video store staples that just lived on rental shelves and on late night TV and somehow still live rent-free in our heads. So if you love 90s nostalgia, weird genre swings, and movies that feel like they were made specifically to be watched late at night on the weekend, you're in the right spot. On this episode, we're going full late night weekend rental vibes. We got boardroom betrayal, neon-soaked secrets, courtroom-ish chaos, and one movie that ends with you just staring at the credits like, what the hell just happened? And by the end of this lineup, someone's going to be framed, someone's going to seduce someone they absolutely shouldn't, and at least one person is going to make the worst decision imaginable, all while a saxophone backtrack subtly tries to warn them. So grab your snack of choice, adjust your TV's tracking like it's 1995, and let's dive into our 90s erotic thriller lineup. Alright, the first tape in tonight's Journey of Bad Decisions marathon is Disclosure from 1994, directed by Barry Levinson and starring Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, with Donald Sutherland lurking around the entire time like a corporate gargoyle. Now the setup here is peak 90s workplace paranoia. Douglas plays Tom Sanders, a rising executive at a Seattle tech company whose former flame Meredith, played by Demi Moore, is now his boss. So in terms of an erotic thriller, it's a catch-22. It's the textbook setup for a classic porno, but also the perfect setup for an HR nightmare. And sadly for Douglas's Tom, one closed door encounter goes sideways, and suddenly Big Tom and Little Tom are fighting for Big Tom's job, Big Tom's marriage, and Big Tom's sanity, while the HR department is combusting in real time. It's pretty much the kind of movie where a meeting invite feels like foreplay and every room and office is conveniently backlit like a Bugle Boy jeans commercial. Money-wise, this movie was a legit hit, a $55 million budget, a #1 opening weekend in the $10 million range, with earnings topping out at $214 million worldwide. It also became one of the top rentals of 1995, which means this tape got rewound extensively. Despite the popularity, though, critics were mixed. In her review, Janet Maslin said the film was talky and uneventful and that the storytelling was too forced, and Roger Ebert said the film's theme was basically a launching pad for sex scenes. And really, all due respect, wasn't that the point? As a movie night watch, it's glossy, it's tense, it's fun, it's super of its time, but I think in a way that makes it fun to revisit. The story is moving fast, the stakes are constantly escalating, and I mean, the whole thing just has that 90s legal drama energy to it, where every conversation feels like it could quickly turn into a deposition, and then you get the comical VR sequence as the cherry on the sundae. For a few minutes, this movie transforms into a 1994 vision of the future that kind of now looks like a computer demo you'd see at CompUSA. It's ridiculous and also kind of charming because it's just so confident about itself.
They're setting me up. We pushed him too hard. He has nothing to lose.
Well, he hasn't told his wife yet.
Michael Douglas is in full I'm stressed, sweaty, and one bad email away from ruin mode, which was basically his home turf during this era. I think Demi Moore plays Meredith with a cool, controlled, icy authority that just makes every line feel like it's delivered with a paperclip as a weapon. And Donald Sutherland, well, he's great. He's just got that vibe where even when he's being polite, you feel like you're about to get fired or at least get in trouble. And looking back, I think Disclosure is one of those cool movies that just help define that specific 90s lane, the slick adult thriller where technology is scary, HR is scarier, and everybody is just one bad choice away from catastrophe. Now, if Disclosure is boardroom sweat and legal panic, this next rental took that same sultry energy, pulled it into therapy sessions, added a lot more shadows, and just hit peak gratuitousness. God Bless Color of Night from 1994. It's directed by Richard Rush and it stars Bruce Willis and Jane March with a stacked, hey, I know that guy cast behind them, such as Ruben Blades, Leslie Ann Warren, Brad Dourif, Lance Henriksen, and Scott Bakula. To me, this movie is peak mainstream 90s erotic thriller crossed with peak Cinemax After Dark vibes. Willis plays Dr. Bill Kappa, a psychologist who's pretty much spiraling after experiencing a recent traumatic event, which leads him out to LA where he falls into a new therapy group. Just as a murder drags everybody into suspicion, he then meets this mysterious magnetic woman and suddenly the case gets messy. The nights get both steamy and deadly and his professional boundaries evaporate faster than good decisions after drinking room temperature Mad Dog. Financially, it opened in the US at number 4, not bad. With a $6.6 million debut weekend, it would top out at $19.7 million in the States. Worldwide numbers would push it to $46.7 million, all on a reported $40 million budget, so not a total wipeout, but definitely not the jackpot the studio wanted for this glossy adult thriller. Critics were not digging it either. Roger Ebert said credibility was the first thing thrown overboard, and Janet Maslin called it enthusiastically nutty and memorably bizarre. And to be honest, both of these critiques are kind of on point. Because Color of Night is undeniable soap opera cheese in cinematic form. It's deliriously over the top, the plot has the logic of a bad dream, but the movie, bless its heart, commits so hard to its steamy noir mood that you can either lean back and enjoy the ridiculous ride or sit there and start taking notes like, okay, why is everybody in this support group conveniently auditioning to be the killer? So yeah, it's certainly earned its reputation as a campy, convoluted swing that's accidentally funny at times. Where it really did live, though, was home video. Multiple versions floated around. There was the whole behind-the-scenes tug-of-war over a final cut, and with a director's cut kind of being positioned as a video release. And on that rental front, it worked. It even popped up in the national top 10 video cassette rentals in 1995, which to me just kind of honestly feels like its truest home. Late night, low volume, and the remote control within reach, just in case somebody else in the house gets up for a midnight swig of Sunny D.
You're trying to play it safe, trying to see me as a case instead of as a female.
Color of Night quickly became infamous in the so bad it's fascinating lane. It even snagged a Razzie for Worst Picture, which to me is kind of like a trophy molded of VHS plastic, and far from the intended insult, it's kind of like a badge of honor because Color of Night is sexy good, it's definitely sexy bad, and all sorts of sexy in between along its mission of absurdity, and surprisingly, it plays much better now with a stiff drink and nostalgia goggles. Alright, now that we've done therapy and extremely questionable coping mechanisms, this next rental on the list is taking us into San Francisco power circles, scandals, and a murder mystery where everybody looks guilty. Our next rental tonight is Jade from 1995, a William Friedkin erotic thriller written by Joe Esterhaas, starring David Caruso as this assistant San Francisco DA who gets yanked into this high-profile murder case that just so happens to orbit dangerously close to his own circle. Across the table from him are Linda Fiorentino, Chaz Palminteri, Michael Biehn, and Richard Crenna, serving up pure expensive secrets energy. Now, plot-wise, this is classic erotic thriller catnip, a murder, plenty of political heat, sexual blackmail vibes, and a hero who just keeps charging into the fog like his libido has a badge and diplomatic immunity. I mean, the plot in this one is filled with enough twists and turns for 2 movies, but it's still intriguing to see unfold. In this movie, everybody's lying, everybody's sweating, and the dialogue is so breathy it should come with an Altoid. As for its box office performance though, oof, it was not kind. Jade is glossy, it's elegant, luxurious, none of which is cheap. So this movie had a $50 million budget. It would open to a limp $4.3 million, debuting at number 5. It would pull in under $10 million domestically, and that's not erotic thriller money in the 90s. And critics weren't into it either. Janet Maslin, in her review when speaking on Fiorentino, said that after her sensational work in The Last Seduction that she really didn't deserve this, which is a bit harsh. I mean, sure, Jade is flawed, but still, I do think there is a credible murder mystery at the core of this movie that does have some appeal. This movie is glossy, it's elegantly sleazy in that very mid-90s cologne commercial sort of way, but it's also kind of interesting because it totally commits to the mood, even when the story starts moving around like a hummingbird in a yard full of feeders, and it just has that reputation as a sleek misfire that swings big and lands somewhere in the vicinity of its target.
You know, a couple of those creeps, they didn't even want me. They wanted this other girl. One of those guys was the governor. She must have rocked his world.
Home video, though, is where the lore for Jade would get a little bit juicy. An unrated director's cut floated around after its release. It became one of those whispered, "Have you seen the other version?" titles for late-night cable surfers, and really, that's the pop culture impact for Jade. It wasn't a mainstream hit, but it was certainly a strong VHS afterlife movie, kind of remembered as being a twisty misfire that's still weirdly fun to revisit when you're in the mood for scandal with an expensive price tag. Okay, now that we've done San Francisco high society, let's swerve into the video store Youthquake lane for this next one that delivers that same sweaty thriller DNA, but with a much smaller budget. Alright, this next rental is the bottom shelf surprise of the night. Blown Away, not the Tommy Lee Jones, Jeff Bridges one from '94. We're stepping back a year to 1993 to another Blown Away directed by Brenton Spencer, starring Corey Haim, Nicole Eggert, and Corey Feldman. In this one, Nicole Eggert plays Megan, the rich, reckless daughter of a ski resort owner, and Corey Haim plays Rich, the working-class guy who rescues her during a near accident and then immediately gets just pulled into her orbit, which is basically a gravity well made of secrets on top of secrets and acrobatic sex and terrible decision-making. Corey Feldman shows up as well as the clearly shady older brother with huge don't trust this guy vibes, and then the movie starts stacking bodies very slowly, escalating the suspension as well, and littering all the nonsense with some thought-provoking sex scenes that admittedly young Anthony just adored. I mean, it was a commitment to acting that I had never seen as a teen. Now, box office talk is a little bit different with this movie because it did premiere on HBO and soon after hit VHS, so it's all cable and rental life and not theatrical numbers with this trashy little gem, but that's also a bit of its true legacy, I think. It's a two Coreys era thriller that lived on rental shelves and late night programming for years, the kind of movie you'd see the cover art and think this is either going to be trash or treasure, and somehow it's a bit of both. This movie is peak late night cable sleaze thriller. It's got that made for HBO vibe all over it, where everyone's either staring intensely or making out intensely or sometimes both at the same time. The ski resort setting is kinda hilarious too because nothing says erotic danger like having a lift ticket.
It's a nice duck.
Regardless, it's a textbook example of a movie that usually got watched with the volume turned down and the remote kept within panic reach. Alright, now we've done corporate scandal, late night therapy, San Francisco sleaze, and now a ski resort soap opera fueled on nicely lit gratuitous sex scenes, which means it's time for our closer, the film that doesn't so much turn up the heat as much as it rewires the thermostat. Alright, now this rental is one that doesn't just lean into the erotic thriller aisle, it kind of remodels the whole store and then replaces the fluorescent lights with flashing hazards. This is Crash from 1996, written and directed by David Cronenberg, based on the novel by J.G. Ballard and starring James Spader, Deborah Kara Unger, Holly Hunter, Elias Koteas, and Rosanna Arquette. Now, if you were around when this movie was released, you will remember the setup being famously provocative at the time. After a car accident, Spader's character falls into this underground circle of people who are all aroused by car crashes, who all chase that sensation like it's a new kind of religion. Okay, I guess that means if the other movies on tonight's list have been sex plus a lot of secrets, I guess that means Crash is sex plus insurance claim. I remember this was the movie that came out when I was a teen and seemed to kind of start out slightly hot and then not too long into it turned into a, wait, what? Now, when speaking on finances, Crash was an indie movie and never really a mainstream smash, especially with the NC-17 rating situation, which essentially puts your box office potential in a Sergeant Slaughter headlock long before opening weekend even starts. This movie had a limited release, earning about $2.7 million. It would top out at around $3.4 million on a budget floating somewhere between $8 and $10 million. However, either way, this movie was never really built to be a multiplex crowd pleaser. Naturally, it's a movie that plays much differently now than it did when I was a teenager. I find it cold and clinical and just disturbingly hypnotic in a way. I think Cronenberg is able to shoot desire in this one like a laboratory experiment, which somehow just makes everything just feel that much more unsettling. I also really like the tone. The tone is so detached and precise. It's almost emotionless in its exploration of emotional response. So it's unique to say the least. I mean, critics, though, they were split. Audiences, they were split. Your brain will more than likely be split as well because it's not sexy in that typical thriller sense. It's actually fascinatingly alien, like you're kind of watching a taboo being cataloged in real time. But culturally, it did have an impact, and it instantly became one of those cooler talk movies for cinephiles. And that wraps up our rental stack, but before you guys bounce out, if you did have fun cruising the VHS vault tonight, I do have 2 more aisles you're going to want to browse. First, you can slide over to my Friday night rental series where we're cracking open 80s cult classics, comfort food movies, and the kind of tapes that just smell like cardboard sleeves and weekend freedom. If that's not up your aisle, you can swing over to some roundhouse kicks and one-liners and check out my 90s B-action movie series where the plots are simple, the explosions are generous, and every hero looks like he just walked out of the gym. And if you're still with me and you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and most importantly, drop me a comment to let me know which of tonight's tapes you totally rented for the plot. Huge thanks to everybody for watching and supporting and hanging out with me here on the channel. I really do appreciate it. You guys mean the world to me, and we couldn't be doing this without your viewership. Be on the lookout for the next video coming real soon, and until then, movies never say die.
Jack Burton in the